Hi, everybody. I am Holly Celiano, and yes, I do have a bad cold, so I do not sound like my typical self, but I have my guest, Rob Cunningham, on. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you for having me, and I can't wait for you to get healed.
Yes. So last time we were waiting for the Clarity Act that still has not been passed. We were talking about that and the ISO 20022 that just got their final piece on November. And I just wanted to briefly share about that. So that ended the coexistence period for cross border payments, meaning financial institutions had to discontinue the older MT messaging format and switch to the new standard for all cross border payments. So, why don't you talk about that? Because a lot of people still don't understand what the ISO 20022 is all about, why that's so significant with the new financial system. And then I'll screen share with something that you had put out on December 3rd that talks about the cryptos and all of that.
Sure, sure. To make this in as much practical sense understanding as possible, this is really going from dark to light. Okay, the money transmitter system sent a very kind of analog, sort of cryptic message that, yeah, money sent, information on file. Okay, that didn't give a lot of detailed forensic, immediately accessible, atomically reconcilable and verifiable data set. Okay, it gave checks in the mail, yeah, money sent, money received. What ISO's 20022 does is who sent it, who received it, what time, what's the purpose, what's the code, what were the fees? What was the FX transaction? What was the settlement speed, time, date? Every single thing that is absolutely necessary for there to be perfect transparency, clarity, mathematical verification, and settlement. All of the components that are necessary to make 3 to 5 second settlement happen without skimming, without fraud, without checks in the mail, without trust me, bro, or call our help desk Monday through Friday and we'll tell you what the purpose of the wire was all about. You know, all of this manual friction, manipulation, opportunity for opaqueness and things to happen in the shadow disappeared when ISO 20022 became the standard. So to help people understand, it's like turning on a light switch and the perfect light going through every vein in your body, your nervous system, your veins, your arteries, every single pathway has perfect light. You can see everything that travels across the network. But instead of, I got a bump and I think I got a clump and I'm not sure what's going on, it gives visibility and eyes on a system that requires mathematical precision to operate. And unless you have perfect clarity to have all the variables to ingest into the mathematical engine to then verify, validate, and ledger and settle, you can't have an internet of value in 195 countries operating in the dark. It has to operate in the light, and ISO 20022 is that language set that allows everything to operate in the light.
Great. So I'm going to screen share with what you had put out the other day and pull this up. So, this, I'd like you to read what this is for the audience.
Sure, happy to. If we understand, I'll set this up a little bit, that there's one big rug pull taking place. A global rug pull is being pulled out of from underneath the feet of the people that have been ruling the world. The New World Order, the deep state, the BIS, the City of London, the Group of 300, the world, whoever you want to call it, however we might want to define it. Money has been ruling this world, and the world reserve currency had to originate from somewhere, and somebody had to own it. Somebody had to make up the rules, and somebody had to enforce those rules, and someone had to profit from that world reserve currency, which was a private system that operated in the dark without audits under the rules set up by the owners of the system. That entire carpet is being pulled out from underneath the feet of these people where all wars are bankers' wars. The world reserve currency is operated in secrecy. There's no accountability, and we're just supposed to sit down, shut up, and do what we're told. So this new rail that is going to be light-based, a ledger, think of it as a QuickBooks ledger for 195 nations, and everybody gets to see what transports across the books, across the ledgers. It's one set of records, not 25 or 250 or 2,000, or nothing's in secret. Everything has to have a common language, protocol, and definitions across this new system. So that rail, the one rail that serves humanity, is the XRPL. The XRP ledger is not owned by a corporation. It's not owned by a nation. It's not owned by a non-governmental organization. It's held in public trust for the benefit of all humanity. Anyone can build on top of that ledger or rail, that railing system, that digital ledger technology ledger, which is a public good for all humanity. XRP is a token that operates, that allows, think of it as a rocket ship, a spaceship, an aircraft carrier, a bus, whatever you want to think of it as an Amazon box, a little smiley face on it. Anything of value, which is represented by a token, can go in that box and go point to point across the world in 3 to 5 seconds, verified, ledgered, settled, done. So there's going to be one rail, the XRPL, and a neutral bridge token that does transportation and swaps property, currencies, real world assets, tokenized anything from point to point, person to person, entity to entity, with no middleman, no consolidation, no skimming, no stealing, no perverting, no hiding, no error rates. And it's all there for accountability purposes. So now you have a rail called the XRPL. You have an XRP neutral bridge token. You have the US dollar, known as the real US dollar, the stable coin, or the Ripple Labs US dollar, and an ODL, which is on-demand liquidity. It allows, as Scott Bessent said, he can tokenize the balance sheet of the Treasury. He can tokenize the assets in the sovereign wealth fund. He can immediately tokenize real-world assets like treasuries or T-bills or gold or oil contracts or anything held in the Treasury or the sovereign wealth fund. We can now have the ability to have liquidity on demand that is backed by actual collateral, be it oil or gold or dollars or contracts of palladium or energy, whatever that might be. So this is the new global backbone of global value. Russia can do Russia's currency, but it has to apply to the definition of a stable coin. Brazil can do it, China can do it, Japan can do it. Anybody can issue Apple can do it, Amazon can do it, Azerbaijan can do it. But there's only one definition for stablecoin. They all have to meet the definition. Kind of like there's one definition for male and one for female. You don't get to make up a third. I mean, the definition is the definition. And so if all countries and conglomerates and corporations are held accountable to what is a stablecoin, what is a settlement, what is a real world asset, who's a person, who's a wallet, what's an asset, what's a token, what's a settlement, then we get to play on a level playing field with one another across the world without malfeasance in between. So Humanity deserves an honest financial system that's transparent, secure, and built to lift people up, not drain them in hidden fees, manipulation, delays, or corruption. We deserve a system of accounting that's aligned with immutable laws, not human loopholes, a system that runs in the light, not hides in the darkness. Today, there is only one technology stack, blockchain DLT technology stack on Earth that meets the standards required to rebuild our global finance system on truth, transparency, and accountability. There are three regulatory standard sets that, when you put all three of them together, it filters all of the blockchain companies down to one. The ISO 27001 is a security protocol that protects the innocent. So it makes certain that our IDs aren't stolen, spoofed, hacked, mimicked, but it's a security protocol to ensure that you're you and I'm me, and that nobody else can claim to be me, and no one can come in and drain my wallet or put a mortgage on my house or steal my title or do anything in my behalf. It's a security protocol. And there's SOC 2 type 2 standardization that prevents corruption. It's an anti-corruption standard. And then there's ISO 20022, which we talked about, which is a universal language for money for all nations. When you combine these standards, XRPL's deterministic settlement, XRP's neutrality as a bridge asset. I want to pause here for a second. XRP will never own anything and can never own anything. It cannot have ownership rights. Think of it as an Uber for the world, but the Uber never owns the passenger. The Uber never owns what it transports from point A to point B. XRP is an Uber for moving assets between point A and point B around the world. It'll never have any beneficial ownership rights or claim to ownership of your property or mine or America's or Brazil's or Saudi Arabia's or anybody. It is a transportation system. It's a bridge token, neutral in nature. Okay. The RLUSD is our regulated stablecoin. It's got to be backed by treasuries, and U.S. government issued treasury obligations that are generally 93 days or less in maturity. But it's audited every single month. There has to be one-to-one collateral or more, 100% assets behind every issued RLUSD, because that makes it sound money, and it also eliminates fractional reserve lending. You can't deposit 100 RLUSD and all of a sudden 900 RLUSD get to be put into circulation. It doesn't work that way. The idea of a regulated stable coin with one-to-one collateral totally obliterates fractional reserve lending. You cannot mint RLUSDs or stable coins out of thin air like the Federal Reserve prints money out of thin air. That puts an end to all of that. And then RippleNet's on-demand liquidity, this global liquidity fabric, since 2012, Ripple and RippleNet have been laying the rails around the world, building on top of the XRP ledger, but providing software solutions that help banks connect to the ledger and transition from the Blockbuster era to the Netflix era. So if you think of RippleNet as a software company that's helping bridge the old world to the new world with all of its technology that meets all of these standards and protocols, that's the role that Ripple plays. Okay? Ripple is a centralized company. Validation and verification of you being you, assets being assets, wallets being wallets, money being transmitted and ledgered appropriately, all of that, Holly, is decentralized to UNL validators around the world that are not paid to validate and confirm with 80% consensus that the transaction was valid, the people were valid, the settlement took place, and the books were recorded correctly. All of the functionality of this one rail to serve humanity is decentralized at the confirmation, consensus, and validation layer. The fact that Ripple has a company and a CEO and employees and an HR director, and they're helping banks in 195 countries and nations and NGOs and conglomerates upgrade their system from the old legacy analog world to the digital ledger technology world, that's their business model. The fact that Ripple is centralized does not make the XRPL, the ledger, the XRP token centralized. What matters most is who are the referees, who keeps the scoreboard, and are they neutral, honest brokers in calling balls and strikes and recording who owns what, who transferred what to whom when, and is it 100% indisputably valid? We either have an honest money system or we have what we have today. And that's what this whole railing system, this whole architectural system is about. If you want to follow the money, it's why this world has decided to assassinate the character of Donald Trump and worse, and defile people that support him. Because when you have a system like this, you cannot have money changers ruining our world and raining hell all over humanity, because they control the money and they work behind the curtain and they lie and they cheat and they steal and they divide and they destroy. They tell you one thing and they do another. When we have a monetary system that's open and transparent and honest, it holds everyone accountable to one standard. It literally transforms everything. That's the design here. So we've got the first monetary network designed to honor God's laws, common law, and common sense in a single framework. No deception, no theft, no hidden actors, no broken promises, no elite backdoors, no double standards. XRP is not a coin. It's not a fad. This whole digital ledger technology architecture that's been built around the world is an exoskeleton for global civilization. It's engineered so that if everyone trusts each other, speed happens quickly, efficiently, with certainty and integrity. Who's going to fight the next war? We have a level playing field, and I can compete, and nobody's skimming money out the top or instigating wars for profit. The old adage, all wars are bankers' wars. Why? Because they get to soak every participant that's in the war with tons of debt and charge them interest on that debt for the next 30 or 40 years. So they have a vested interest in starting wars because they can create money out of thin air and then demand patronage and usury interest for 30 years from 20 countries, and you never get to audit the books and see it because they're a private organization. When you have a system like this, it's not a private organization. There's no profiteering off of war making. It makes it a non-profitable endeavor beyond the fact that it's immoral. There is no profit to be made in warmongering and war making because there's nowhere to hide the profits. And there's no way to violate the rules by printing money out of thin air and taxing people on something that you just created with a money printer, which in essence takes their life from them. You drown them in debt, you commit them to work to pay back the debt you created out of thin air and the interest on top of that debt. So now I have to live the rest of my life serving an invisible master money and interest that they just created out of whole cloth. That doesn't happen anymore. So this is not opinion. This is engineering reality. It's our whole monetary system that's being upgraded. The rails are changing, and the truth is being revealed in the standards that only XRPL meets in its totality, period. One stable genius. Remember how Trump used to kind of poke fun at people in the media and called himself a stable genius back in his first term in office? Well, funny, we had a stable coin act called the Genius Act that regulated stable coins. The New York Department of Financial Services gave the highest regulatory, most diligently strict compliance office perhaps in the world, approved the RLUSD in December of 2024, requiring one-to-one treasury collateral backing every single RLUSD that's ever issued, and there have to be monthly audits for compliance purposes to make absolutely certain the RLUSD is a stable coin that's 100% collateralized. The stable genius made that happen. The Clarity Act will bring finality to the commodity known as XRP, the digital ledger technology ecosystem, and put the first set of laws on the books that control the totality of this industry, and that corporate America, the S&P 500 and the Fortune 1000, all the companies in the world, the board of directors and the lawyers can clearly understand what the rules are and then make business decisions accordingly. We still don't have that body of law yet. When we do, that basically snaps all the parts and pieces in place. We have the ledger, we have the token, we have the stable coin, we have ISO 20022, we have the Genius Act, we'll have the Clarity Act, and the Market Structure Act may be coming right after it or be combined with the Clarity Act. I'm not sure. But once the crypto capital of the world has every piece of this puzzle articulated and legislated and activated in the world, welcome to the new birth of freedom.
That was a brilliant summary of what all of that was. You just spelled it out so easily for everybody that I think anybody at whatever level you are could understand that. If you're a beginner, you'd understand it. And if you're advanced in this, you'd get this. So thank you. I'm going to stop screen share. Um, and then you gave my voice a big rest, so thank you. You did so much talking. Um, wow, it's so exciting seeing all the pieces come into to like their puzzle pieces coming into play. And I think the last puzzle piece is the Clarity Act that we're waiting on, which is setting rules in place on how this whole new financial system is going to operate.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It absolutely is. No guesswork, no close enough. Everything is so precise in an AI world, in an atomic settlement world, in an accounting world, in a value world, in a property rights world. Who owns what, when, where, how? And this is probably the most important thing, Holly. What this entire system does is it honors, respects, protects, and defends mutual consent. Okay? Mutual means two. The highest moral law in the universe is mutual consent because you're sovereign and I'm a sovereign. You have unalienable rights and I have unalienable rights. And if I want to transfer some of my property to you, or I want to go into contract with you, or you want to make an agreement with me, there should be two people in that relationship. not a hidden third party, not a thief of inflation, not a taxer, not a stealer, not a debaser, not an inflator, not a someone who is uninvited to the party. Mutual consent means two. XRP is a bridge token, transfers party between country A and country B, Treasury A and Treasury B. There is no BIS, Federal Reserve, Rothschild hidden hand, secret snake, or interloping third party in there stealing, skimming, deflating, or debasing my property just because I had the audacity of giving some of it to you.
And you can see why the bankers have been fighting tooth and nail to prevent this because it's putting them out of business. They
Amen.
cannot rape us, pillage us, and do all this backdoor trading that they've done for decades and decades, making money on our sweat.
And our lack of knowledge. What did Jesus say? He said, my people are destroyed for their lack of knowledge. This is the very reason that Jesus flipped over the money changer tables. He was disrupting a RICO business model. He was flipping over the tables because of fraud being perpetrated on the people between the religious folks that were hosting the money changers and the politicians that were supporting them or bought by the money changers. When Jesus saw the theft and the graft and the 5 cents on the dollar and the fact that people were being screwed and stolen from and taken advantage of, and their lack of an understanding of what money is and how the money changers work, Jesus didn't say, I hate business, I hate commerce, I hate trade. He flipped the tables over because of fraud and corruption. He flipped over their business model because it was unethical and dishonest and fraudulent. And today we have, unfortunately, money changers on the global level. We have institutions that say one thing and do another, and they're as hypocritical as they can be. We have a bunch of bought and paid for politicians that do whatever the hell the people that financed them and put them in the office tell them to do. So the environment of which Jesus got assassinated 2,000 years ago hasn't changed much until President Trump came down the escalator to say, we're going to change all this.
Right. So when you look at that, that was 2015, I believe he came down the escalator.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
And here we are 10 years later. 10 years to change all of this around is not that long of a period when everybody keeps asking, when's it happening? When's it happening? Well, you know what? The entire global world needs to be restructured from the inside out. And we're just about ready to see the great unveiling once the Clarity Act is in. Do you believe that'll happen before Christmas?
Uh, I don't know. I think, but a lot of times, Holly, in anticipation of, or news will leak out and information will come out as to when and who's going to sign it and what it's going to look like. And markets tend to be forward looking, and markets tend to anticipate where they think things are going to go. And they don't wait till the ink is on the paper. They kind of move sometimes before the ink gets on the paper, right? If they find out that IBM's buying Dell, they're not going to sit around and wait till the closing happens, right? They're going to go buy some Dell stock, and they're going to drive the price up. So, uh, in that instance, there's probably Brad Garlinghouse. I just saw him on an interview yesterday. Mentioned he thinks it'll probably be, definitely in the first half of 2026. But January the 10th is the first half. February the 2nd is the first half. And does that mean XRP can't go to 15 or 20 or $40 because there's no ink on paper? No, it doesn't mean that either. I am not Nostradamus. I try to use common sense and discernment. And, last time I think we spoke, my thought process was one of the easiest ways to tamper down market manipulation before ISO 20022 kicked in would be to pass the Clarity Act, so it would make it illegal for market manipulation. I was just incorrect. I was hoping that it would happen. My rose-colored glasses had it thinking it would make logical common sense to do two birds with one stone, or in the same week get them both done. Um, but and we've seen volatility. We're seeing XRP go from 220 or 225 to 199.
Right.
And there's not a lot of news. It's just volatility and who's shaking the tree and making people volatile. And one of my really good friends and researchers in this space, I think Zach Rector had mentioned that in the last 30 days or 60 days, he's seen about $800 million or 800 million XRP, I believe it was, leave the exchanges and the retail hands. At about the same time, 800 million XRP were bought by ETFs and institutions.
Right.
So it was very sad to see people get frustrated, get impatient, get scared, get tired, tap out, sell at the bottom at the very time the institutions are buying.
Right. Well, one of the things that people need to understand, owning XRP or XLM, it's not a get rich quick scheme. So you have to be in it for the long run till it does its switch over and goes, increasing in value. So just because you see it, it had gotten a couple of months ago 359 or 360, and now it went below $2 recently, don't panic. I mean, that's just the way this market rolls. You have to just be in it for the long haul. Look at, what happened with Bitcoin when it first came out. It was pennies, and recently it got up to $126,000 a token. So, can that happen with XRP? Yes, but that took years and years for that to happen with Bitcoin. So, you have to just withstand this volatility, as you have said.
Yeah, and Holly, it's so important for people too to understand emotions drive price.
Mhm.
Okay, knowledge and wisdom and value drives value. In the short run, emotions can make prices go all over the map. In the longer run, if you know, hey, I think the wheel is going to be pretty important. I think, Home Depot is going to be around for a while, or Apple stock's going to be around for a while. If you know what you own and you see where the future's going and you buy some Apple stock, when's a good time to sell Apple stock? When was a good time to sell Coca-Cola? When was a good time to sell Berkshire Hathaway? Intel, Microsoft. You know, when you know what you own, then you become a little bit more aware of, but immune to emotional soothsayers and news reports and gurus that are prognosticating the price and the technical charts and what's going to happen next Thursday at 2:12 p.m. because X, Y, and Z is going to. We can get so caught up in the nonsense and just completely lose sight of the principles that are in play here. You know.
I agree. I know you have a big Christmas party. I don't want to keep you much longer. Any final words you want to leave the audience with?
Merry Christmas. Um, the stronger our faith is in immutable laws and principles, and we know what's happening in the world, we know where the hockey puck is going. We know that what was true 2,000 years ago is true today and will be true in the future forever. The more we can anchor ourselves into those laws and principles, the less we're going to be shaken out of the market, the less we're going to live in fear and anxiety and uncertainty and doubt and get into petty arguments with people who think that their crystal ball or their binoculars are better and shinier and cooler than your binoculars. And if we get in the wrong arena and we get in the wrong fight and we start arguing over things that aren't really valid from a principles standpoint, a mathematics standpoint, a justice, an equity or a law standpoint, we start arguing over things that do nothing but extract our time, effort, energy, and focus. And if we get into arguments on topics that are irrelevant, I mean, do you ever hear anybody going, "Oh, this AI thing's a fad. It's just going to go away. It's not going to be. It won't be here in 10 years from now." No one's arguing whether AI is going to be around. Why are we arguing whether DLT and crypto, and this rail system and atomic settlement and honesty and transparency and immutability? Do we think this is going away in 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years from now? Are we? I mean, what are we really arguing about here? Whose coin can beat up the other person's coin? Maybe it's important to look into utility and features and function. What is the purpose of honest money? What's the benefit? What happens to all people on earth if we level the playing field in 195 countries and all the tables get stood up right side, facing up, and everybody plays with an equal set of rules, and everybody lives in a world of abundance, and we can trade if we want to and not trade if we don't want to, but we don't have the WEF, we don't have the United Nations, we don't have the BIS, we don't have the Council of 300, we don't have anybody telling us Federal Reserve, giving us permission slips and telling us how we can or can't run our sovereign lives. What happens when we get those interlopers out of our lives? We have true, honest money, and we respect everyone's unalienable rights in 195 countries. To me, that looks like a pretty damn good place to live.
Looks like a beautiful place to live. I can't wait for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, that was a great place to leave us off on. So thank you so much for coming back on again, Rob. It's always a pleasure. I know the audience really enjoyed what you had to say last time. And enjoy your Christmas party and Merry Christmas to you. And thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Holly, and please take care of that cold and Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.